Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Zevachim daf Tzadi Aleph. We are going to begin on the bottom of Tzadik Amid Beis. We just saw the Mishnah. So this parak brings two important details. One of them is kol the tadir, anything which is more commonly done or more frequent, that comes first, or more commonly known, the expression tadir v'sheino tadir kodem. But yet it also brings another interesting point, that anything which has a higher level of kedusha comes before the thing which has less kedusha. So now the two are going to go head to head. Iboilhu, four onto the bottom. Tadir umekudish eis mehen koidem. So if you have something which comes a lot, but the other item, even though it's not as frequent, it's more sanctified. So which one comes first? I love the studim over here. It's just beautiful. Listen to this. Tadir koidem mishum de tadir. Oh, dilma mekudish koidem de kaddish. Maybe tadir should come first because it's tadir, or maybe the thing which is more kaddish should come first because it's mekudish. Interesting. It's like, I'm not sure why the Gemara even has to explain the studim. It's obvious what they are. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what that's adding, but nonetheless, that's a kasha. Tashma, Tamidin koidim l'musafin. So we mentioned that, and let's go straight into Rashi to give us an example. Kugoin dam oilas tamid. So if you have the blood of the carbon oilas tamid, so obviously it's all the time. But yet you also have a dam chatas oindin, and you have the dam of a chatas that's just sitting there. So zet tadir. So we know that obviously a tamid comes a lot more often. Zem kudish mimenu kedamrinan dam chatas kodim dam oila. We've said before, with one exception about the sir bodas kachavim, but for the most part, or maybe another for the musafei chag. But for the most part, a chatas comes from an oila. So on one hand, if you have an oilas tamid, so that's tamid, right? It's more tadir. However, if you're going against a chatas comes before an oila because it's more mekudish. Because language of mekudish, they're both kachi kadashim, but it brings itself cheese kapar. So tashma, tamidim kaidim l'musafin. The carbon tamid comes before the carbon musaf, as we continue to study alpha and alpha. Now v'afa gav du musafin kadishi. The musaf is more kadosh than the tamid, says Rashi. Now the musafin kadishi, musafin shem shavas aleihen, has like a higher level of holiness. Shem bias chayvala, but tamidim ba af b'choil. So basically, because Musaf comes on Shabbos, for example, a holy day, so it should be therefore be more sanctified than a Tamid, which is done all the time, but it's also done on a weekday, which is Choil. So which is ought to what? Shabbos and Musaf and Ahani. Just because on Shabbos it's brought, that doesn't mean that it's like more holy, therefore it helps with Tamidim lo Ahani. But it doesn't help the Tamidim, because Tamidim are also brought on Shabbos. So Shabbos should sanctify both of them. Tashma, Musafei Shabbos Kaidul Musafei Rosh Chodesh. We said the Musaf of Shabbos comes before the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh. Now, the Musaf of Shabbos is Tamid, and apparently, and Musaf of Rosh Chodesh is Kadosh. It was ought to what? Rosh Chodesh Musafin Didei Ahani Musafei Shabbos Lo Ahani. Again, the fact is that even though Rosh Chodesh is a sanctified holy day, but not only does it sanctify the Musaf Rosh Chodesh, but it will also the Musaf Shabbos Lo Ahani. You're telling me Shabbos doesn't sanctify that either? So they're both Kadosh. Toshma Musaf Rosh Chodesh Kaimel Musaf Rosh Hashanah. After the Rosh Hashanah Kadsha. Rosh Hashanah is a holy day. Ought to what? Rosh Hashanah Musaf Didei Ahani Musaf Rosh Chodesh Lohani, but again, it's still Kaddish because it's Rosh Chodesh. Toshma, Davar Acher, Birchas Hayayin Tadir, Birchas Hayayin Enu Tadir. This is taken from the 8th paragraph of Masechtas Brachos. So, what do you do when it comes to the Friday night Kiddush. So what do you do first? Do you say Mekadosh Shabbos or Brei Pri Hagafen? Of course, we all know that we say Brei Pri Hagafen first. But why? It's because Berachas Hayom Tidir, Berachas Hayom Enu Tidir. The Tader Shenu Tader, Tader Koidim. Nafgav the Berachas Hayom Kadesha. Because wine, you can drink anytime. So it's not Kadosh, but when you say Bracha Hashem Kadesh HaShabbos, that's specifically on Shabbos. So that bracha is more Mekudesh. Onto what? Shabbos Berachas Hayom Mahani Berachas Hayom Lohani? Same question. Tashma. Diyam Rabbi Yochanan Halacha Mispal Adam Shel Minach V'Achar Shel Musafin. If a person has in front of them two tefillas, one is mincha and one is musaf, so which one should you do? Right? So you should daven mincha first. Why? It must be because mincha is tadir, and that which is tadir is more important than musaf, even though it's kadosh. Ought to what? Shabbos l'tfilos musaf and ahani l'tfilos mincha lohani? Same question. Same answer basically. Tashma. Shlomim shel emesh. So we saw in yesterday's Mishnah, which is what we conclude with. If you have carbon shlomim, and it was brought yesterday. Now again, a shlomim you have day, night, day. So now you're up to the last day. Now chatzis asham shel yoim, and you have a chatzis and asham of that day in which you have that limited amount of time to eat it. So shlomim shel emish kaidman. The shlomim shall come first. Now this is a little bit hard to understand. Why should the shlomim come first? Now actually, even though this is the opinion that's brought down over here, it's actually a machlokus. That's the words of Rabbi Meir. The Chachamim say Chatas comes first, Mimneshi Kashi Kadashim. So we're going to have to understand that in a second. But Ha'idi V'idi the Yoim, Chatas V'asham Kanmi. If let's say both of them are from today, then the Chatas and Asham would come first. The Avcha the Shlom Tadiri. Even though the Shlom is Tadir, I guess we can use the language because it's more, you have more time. So it's around more. So we see that Kaddish comes before Tadir. So Merava Mitzui Ka'amrit. This is Matzui Ka'amrit. It's something which happens to be Tadir Kimiboylan, Matzui Lo Kimiboylan. Look over Rashi. What is commonly done? She'en Tidirasoi Chayva Ela Shehu Matzui Tamid Yosim Mechavero. The Tadir She'en Tidirasu Chayva. It's the whole notion of taking upon yourself that which is more tadir is only when ela shehu matzui tamid yos mechaver, when it's commonly more than its friend. Over here, it's not. Okay, matzui lo kimaboylan. Tadir kimaboylan. Matzui lo kimaboylan. Armali Rabhuna Bar Yehuda L'Rabba ought to what? Matzoi lav tader? Well, you're telling me something which is commonly done is not tader? Basanya. In other words, what makes it a tader? Because the shlomim, people bring a lot of shlomim. Not everyone brings a chatas or anything, because that's only if you sin. So just because it's commonly done, that doesn't make it tader. So what do you mean? It's still tader. Basanya oitzis a pasach sheno tader. I'm going to exclude the carbon Pesach, which is not common, it's only once a year, Voitzias Hamila Shahid Tadira, but not meal, which is Tadir. Now, says Rashi, what is that referring to? So, Mataris Kohanim, Rashi quotes, Shenui Gabichatos, Tekatani Bahari Pesach Hamila, Ancient Karis. When it comes to Pesach and Mila, both of those are situations where the violation of not doing them is a chiv karis. Yocha yavi al shkagos and chatas. So it says over there that what happens if it was b'shaygeg? Maybe again normally b'mezid when there was a din of karis b'shaygeg you're chayav chatas. Talmudomer ashol siyasena. It's something in which you didn't do. In other words, it's something which is like a lo saseh that you did. Yotzu pesach amil shein mitzvah saseh. This is referring to Pesach and Mila are the only times there's a chiv kares when it's the opposite situation where you were supposed to do it and you didn't do it. Oitz is a Pesach sheinu tadir, so he says excluding Pesach it's not tadir. V'lo oitz is a Mila she tadira. Maybe not Mila, which is tadir. Talmud shel siyasana alma matzui tadirhu. Something which is commonly done is tadir. So a bris Mila is something which is common and it's all the time, right? It's always a bris Mila. Pesach is only once a year. So we see that matzah is something which is considered to be tadir. Says Gemara, my tedira b'mitzvahs. It just means sedura b'mitzvahs. Shin nichras oleha shal sheser brisos b'tzivuyin, because it has 13 brisos connected to it. V'boy seima mila gabe Pesach ki tadir damya. When you look at mila comparable to Pesach, it's considered like tadir because it's matzoi, but maybe matzoi by shlomim regarding tachatos, that's not considered to be tadir. Iboyhu tadir v'sheinu tadir. So we didn't answer this question. So basically, iboy delishata. So iboyhu tadir v'sheinu tadir. So again, when you have a tadir v'sheinu tadir, obviously you're supposed to do the tadir one first, but you made a mistake. The kadim v'shachet l'sheinu tadir. You did the shechita of the tadir. Now you're stuck with an animal that you shechted, which you shouldn't have, but you still have more avoda to do with it. And you have the tadir one, which you should have done, you should have started with. Now what do you do in the middle? Mi amrin and kivan de shachte makrivle. Since you did the shechita, maybe you should do everything else, the zrik and everything. O dilma yoyvel acher, give it to someone else, like we do on Yom Kippur. The maris medama, let him mix up the blood so it doesn't congeal. Ad the makrivle tadir. Now go and bring the tadir and do everything with it. The hadar makrivle sheno tadir. So Amar Huna. Mesur Tashma, Shlomim Shel Emesh. If you have a carbon Shlomim of yesterday, Chatas V'Ashim Shel Yoim, and Chatas V'Ashim from today, Shel Emesh Kaidim L'Shel Shel Yoim. So the one of yesterday, the Shlomim comes first. Ha the Yoim Dumya de Emesh. So if the day is comparable to the day before, V'Hu Adin the Kadim, V'Hu Adin the Kadim Shachte L'Shlomim. The Hechidami. What is it talking about? The kadim shachtel shlomim chatas ashim kadmi. So what do we see? Probably what happened is you shechted the shlomim. You first shechted the shlomim, and the chatas and ashim comes first, right? So we see that even though you did it in a particular way, it doesn't make any difference. You should continue with the chatas and ashim. So maybe the shenu tadir was done wrong. You should continue with the one which is done right with the tadir. Says Rashi. The chatas ashim shel yoim oimdin l'shachet. The ones which are standing here right now are supposed to be shechted. Shlomim shel emesh kaidim l'zarik. And the shlomim of yesterday, you were supposed to the sprinkling was earlier. Di b'shneihem oimdin l'shachet. If both of them are just standing to be shechted, lo omer de kadmu shlomim. But we wouldn't say the shlom was first. The time of the bam emesh, it's only because it came the day before. If it was the same time, the yoim, the kadim shachtinu shlomim bereish, you shet the shlomim, arin and shchitas chatas ashim kadmu l'zrika shlomim. Maybe we would still require then to do the zrika first of the chatas and ashim, even though you already shechted the shlomim. Alma mekudish v'sheinu mekudish, or V'kadim shachtu l'shein mekudesh, which is a very interesting Rashi, because the whole question was tadir shenu tadir, but it's the same question as mekudesh l'shein mekudesh. The kadosh shachtu l'shein mekudesh, you shachted again the shlomim, which is shein mekudesh. Yehei echad memaris bedam, will mix up the blood. V'yizur kesem mekudesh, the chatas nashim, but we didn't look tadir v'sheinu tadir, right? So it should be the same thing. So dilma shlomim the emesh chatas the emesh the yoim. So heichem ishkachas law that you have a chatas, you have a shlomim of yesterday, and a chatas asham of today. So kegoin heichem ishkachas law the shachtin hu turvayu, that you actually shechted both of them, and both of them are shechted. Avol lo shachtin hu turvayu. If you didn't shecht both of them, tiboylech, then it would actually remain a question like we have. Toshma. Davar acher birchas hayayin tidir birchas hayoim enu tidira. The tadir shenu tadir kaidim. So hachinami kivan the astian, since they both come in front of us, command the shchiti turvayu dami. It's like they were both shechted at the same time. Okay, Toshma Yom Rav Yochanan halacha mismal adam mishal mincha ve'achach shel musafin hachinami kivan the mati zman tfilas mincha. Now that it's time to daven mincha and musaf, command the shchiti turvayu dami. It's like they were both shechted. Normally, it's not like one was shechted and one wasn't. Right? They're both coming at the same time. So Amrullah, even though one was before, doesn't make any difference. Right now, they're both here at the same time. Amrullah Ravacha Beredu Rabashu Ravina Shachdu. Let's say you shechted the carbon Pesach Kaidim Chatzos. before its time, which you were supposed to, which is on Erev Shabbos, but after Chatzos, Pasum Imnei Shenemar by Bein Harbayim. It's supposed to have been shechted in the afternoon. Kaidim Tamid, it was done before the carbon Tamid, kosher. The Hey Memaris Bedamo and Shiyizra Kadam. You should mix up the blood until the Zrikas Adam. So, even though it's true that you were supposed to do the Tamid first, but if you shechted the carbon Pesach, that's okay. But that's okay. But we're going to allow you to just keep mixing up that dam and let us now deal with the Tamid as it was supposed to be brought first, as it's brought down in Perik Tamid Nishchan, Masechta Pesachim. So Achamayaskin is going to Kadim Shachtin with Tamid Bereisha. You actually shechted the Tamid first, then you shechted the which is what you're supposed to do, but you didn't do the Zrika of the Pesach. Then you shechted the carbon Pesach, and then we will do the Zrika first of the Tamid. Armali Ravacha Sabu Ravashim Asnisan Abideka. You can also prove it from the language of the Mishnah. Katani Ad Sheyizrak Adam, V'Katani Ad Sheyishchait V'Yizrak Dam. Shmamina. Why does it say that? Must be because you already did shchita. All you have left is the zrika, and that's what it's talking about. So again, we don't have an answer to that question either. Rekuin Kohanim Rishayin. So my time. Well, why are they allowed to do whatever they want with this meat? So they can eat it the way that kings eat, and therefore, however they want to prepare it, so it's nice. That is perfectly fine. Okay, let's now continue with the next Mishnah. We're going to finish the parak today. Omer Rav Shimon. We've had this sheet before. We said at the bottom of this Mishnah. So Rav Shimon says, Im Re'is Shemen, if you happen to gaze upon oil, Shu Mischalik Ba'azar, that's being distributed to the Kohanim for them to be able to eat in the Azara, and Shal Mahu. You don't have to start thinking deeply about where this oil came from. There's only a couple possibilities. Ella Meiser Kike, it could be the leftovers of the Minchas Yisrael. And Rashi says that Minchas Ma'afe Sheba Chalos Rekikin, Chalos Beloilan Rekikin Moishchen. Moishchen Kimin Chaf. It's anointed like the letter Chaf. V'shar Hashemen Nechol Kohanim. So when it comes to the Rekiki Minchas Yisrael, so it was applied or anointed in a certain way, like a chaf, but the rest of the oil went to the Kohanim. Okay, that was one. So it could be the leftovers of the Minchas Yisrael, the lug shemen shel Matzayra, right? It could also be referring to the lug of oil that a Matzayra has to bring. Okay. So those are the possibilities. Imar Isa Shemen Shu Nitan al Gabay Ishim, and if you would find oil that's being burnt up, you don't have to ask what that is. El Meiser Kiki Minchas Kohanim. There it's Minchas Kohanim. The Mincha of a Kohen is Kul Kolil. It's completely burned. So only Minchas Yisrael is distributed to the Kohanim, but Minchas Kohanim has to be burnt up. Fine. And also, Minchas Kohen Mashiach, when it comes to the flour offering of the Kohen Gadol as well. So that's also burned on the Mizbeach. She'en this Nadvin Shemen, and this is what's brought down in Yeshita Rav Shimon, that you're not allowed to bring, you can never even have a Havamina, that this oil was specifically designated as a Nadava as oil alone. Oil can accompany a carbon, but it's not brought as a Nadava only as oil. That we do not accept. And therefore there's no reason to think that oil came from a Nadava. Rav Tarfon omis Nadvin Shemen. That's not true. Rav Tarfon disagrees and says you could give a Nadava of only oil, not accompanying a carbon, and therefore it's possible that could be where it's coming from as well. Okay, let's see this Gemara over here and wrap up this parak. Sadi Alpha Midbeis. Omer Shmuel. L'div Rav Tarfon hamas nadiv shemen. So he does hold that you can bring oil on its own as a gift, as a nedava. So shemen koimtzai, when it comes to the kamitza, the shirav, and the leftovers, necholin, is eaten. Says Rashi, misnadiv shemen l'div Rav Tarfon Koimsa umaktir hakaimitz v'shir necholin. When it comes to the kmitza, so that is done. However, its leftovers the kohanim get to eat. My time, because Amar carbon mincha, malamish misnavin shemen. So they learn out from this drasha that you can even give just oil. V'chi mincha ma mincha koimsa. You do some type of the flour, you take some of the flour off, and that's burnt on the mizbech. However, shireha necholin. So av shemen kaimtza v'shir of necholin. So too, there's a form of kemitza on just the oil, which is a little bit of it's burned on the mizbech, but the rest is given for consumption to the kohanim. Rav Zera avanam and tanina. I can also prove this. Rav Shimon imur isa shemen shemischalik ba'azara. If, let's say, oil is being distributed on the kohanim, you don't have to ask. Yisrael, because it's either going to be the leftover of the wafers of the mincha offering of Yisrael, which has oil, the lug shemen shel matzayra, or the lug of oil of a matzayra. Shemis nadvin, because again, according to him, we do not do a nadava of oil itself. Mechlal demandi omer misnadvin. Mischalik. It must be the one who holds that we do allow it, Shita Rav Tarfon, of a nadav of oil alone, it would also be distributed too. Amrei Bayis, Ema Seifa, Imur Isa Kayin Shenitan al Gabi Ishim. If you see Imur Isa Shemen Shenitan al Gabi Ishim, if you see oil that's being on the fire in the mizbeach, you don't have to ask. Because the mincha of a kohen is cool, completely burnt. Minchas kohen Mashiach, as well as that of a kohen gadol. Shemis nadvin shemen. Again, because you cannot give it a oil offering. A kohen cannot give an oil offering alone. So machlal dolmandi armimis nadvin kula ishim. So that's mashma. Therefore, according to the shita that holds a kohen could give oil, that the entire thing would be burnt on the fire. So Abaye kasha ratio, Rav Zera kasha seifa. According to Abaye, it would be a kasha in the ratio, and according to Rav Zera, it's a kasha in the seifa. Okay, what is the reason for that? So again, Rav Zera brought a proof from our Mishnah, so this is going to be a kasha on him, the seifa, that he somehow holds that because of the proof, that it must be the misnadvin mischalkin, so it must be over here kula ishim. If you look in Rashi, Tana Resham, okay, fine. So Bishlam or Rav Zera, I can understand Rav Zera. Again, Rav Zera is the one who proved from the Resha that it must be that only the Shita Rav Shimon holds that you can't give oil as the nadava, and therefore it's not distributed. Mashma, according to Rav Tarfon, it is distributed. So Rav Zera, Reisha B'Shirayim, the Reisha is talking about the leftovers that are given to the Kohanim. Seifa B'Kaimitz, and the Seifa is talking about the oil that's put on the fire. So therefore it's not talking about it being consumed. El Labaye Kasha, but according to Abaye, so again, that's Rav Zera, perhaps is not too difficult. Abaye says, but you can see in the Seifa that it says Misnadvin Kulan Ishim. So how does Abaye understand the Reisha? Okay, so Tana Reisha Atu Seifa. Let's go in Rashi. Reisha, the Tani Gabi Shemen Hamischalik. The Reisha is talking about the oil which is being distributed to the Kohanim. Niyat Tzarech Lishoyel Mahu. That really is not coming to add anything. Because even if you do hold, like Rav Tarfon, that it is you could give oil, it doesn't mean it's distributed. It's possible that everyone holds that you could maybe it's true that even though it's a machlok, is whether or not you could actually give it as a gift. Maybe no one holds that it's actually it's distributed. Maybe it's completely burned. And if you see things burning, because you don't give oil. The davka shmeinan the ilu lomandi omer misnadvin. the one who holds you could give oil, noisein, it could be on the mizbeach. Tadareisha nami imur isa shemen mischalik. In other words, maybe it's true that if you give oil, doesn't mean that you're allowed. It's going to be distributed among the kohanim, according to the shita of Abaye. Now, bishlam seifa tani mishum reisha el reisha mishum seifa mitani. It's possible that the reisha is not necessary, but we use the reisha because of the seifa. Even though we think it makes more sense, the chiddush is in the reisha, then the seifa is just kedei nitzbah. But it could be the other way around too. Ambi marava tana reisha mishum seifa. It does happen that way. Tashma yayin kedivi Rabbi Kiva l'safalim. So, let's look in Rashi. In Masechtas Menachos, which we're going to get to soon, but the end of Masechtas Nedavos, in Menachos it says, Misnadvin Yayin, that a person is allowed to give just wine as a gift. That's his Shita. The aim is Misnadvin Shemen, but similar to Shita's Rav Shimon, you can't just give oil. Oisin Yayin, so when you do give wine alone, L'svalim, Hu Noisein L'nasech, you put the wine into bowls. V'lo Zalif al Ishim, it's not going to be sprinkled into the fire, but rather it's going to be poured like nisach hayayin. That's how we do the wine. So yayin kedivri Rabbi Kiva l'safalim. That's what we're going to do. Shemen kedivri Rav Tarfin l'ishim. However, Rav Tarfin, when you could give, according to him, again he disagrees with Rav Shimon, you could give oil separately, but it's completely burned. Right now, again. What does that mean? It sounds very clear between Rav Zera and Abaye, whether or not it's distributed. It sounds pretty clear it's not distributed. My love, Madin Kul Svalim, Midiyayin Kul Svalim, just the whole wine goes into bowls, Shemin Kul Ishim, and therefore it's a kasha. We clearly see that we don't distribute it to the Kohanim. No, me area, hadikisa hakidisa. One's wine, one's oil. They're totally separate dinim. You can't learn how to ride from one to the other. Okay. Omra Papa. Kitanoi. This whole matter is really a machlokas tanoim. Why? Shemen, when it comes to oil, will yivchais malug. You should not give less than the measurement of a lug. Rabbi says, no, shloishus lugin. Has to actually be 3. 1 is not enough, it has to be 3. So, but my kimifgi. So, Amru Rabbanon Kamei the Rav Papa. Doin mina umina. So, can you learn, when you learn one from the other, doin mina v'uki batra. What does that mean? So, when you learn something and you go back and forth, are you obligated to learn out the whole thing back and forth? It says Rashi, Masha davar tzarich limoid mechaver. When you need to learn something from its friend, shenyachal lomon begufo yilmon mechaver. You can't learn it from itself. You learn from its friend. L'shar davarim shechal limoid megufo ha'amiduhu al minkoimo, and everything else could be stand in its place. Drabanan savri ma mincha, just like the mincha offering, misnadvin. You can always give a mincha offering as a nadava. I'm shemin nisnadvin. So the chiddush is that this is doin mina mina. That just like a mincha can be given as a nadava, you can also give shemen alone as a nadava. Umina. Ma mincha lug shemen. We know when it comes to a mincha, it's accompanied with a lug shemen. Avkan lug shemen. Right? That's why he says it's 1 lug. Uma mincha by itself. And mincha, right, with the oil and everything. It's kumsa. You need to do kemitza on the flour. However, shireha nechalin. However, the leftover of the flour is given to the kohanim. Shemen kaimsa v'shirav nechalin. So too when it comes to if you just do oil, they will say that you have to give some of it on the mizbech, and the rest is given to the kohanim. It is distributed. The idach, the other shita says no. Mincha, ma mincha misnadvin, nav shemen misnadvin. Okay, that is of course the same. However, uki ba'atra. We don't necessarily go all the way and compare one to the next in all matters. Rather, we can keep it in its city, in its place. K'nesachim. Ma nesachim shleishus lugin. When it comes to nesachim in general, it's 3 lug. Av shemen shlosh lugin. It's 3. Ma nesachim, when it comes to giving nesachim, it's kulin l'svalim. It's completely put into a bowl. The entire thing is burned. So all the shemen is burned on the mizbeach. But this is again a machlokas, is maybe it's like kamitza that the leftover goes to the kohanim. So again, maybe it's a machlokas tanaim. If you're talking about comparing it to a mincha, so Reb Nikoliyalma dain mina mina, then certainly you should learn mina umina, and therefore telling you a couple things. First of all, one lug should be enough, and more importantly, that just like the mincha is the leftovers distributed, so too the oil is distributed to the kohanim. Now, Rabbi Ezrach Gamerla, Rabbi learns out from Ezrach. What is that? The pasuk says, "Kol Ezrach yaseh," that all the people should do kacha in this way. It's eil hakar v'yisherech nechol Hashem. So what is that? So Amar Rav Huna Rav Reina Rav Nasan Rav Papa Mimos Zaman Hachi. So one second. So we learn out from Ezrach. Let's go to Rashi. When the Dava Shemen, the fact that the Dava Shemen is allowed could be learned out from Ezrach. V'chi nami dain mina shoishes lugin hein shehu pachos min shibin nesachim. The least among the nesachim is 3 lugin, so that's it. Then the nesachim shel keves. When it comes to the keves, the libations is revius a hin yayin, is a quarter of a hin of wine, as it's written over there. Okay. Anyway, all right. Let's find where we are. Okay. Amalu Rav Huna Bered Rav Nas Rav Papa. Mimos and Sami, how can you say this? Which Sanya carbon mincha, when it's referring to the carbon mincha malamid, we learn shemisnadvin shemen. We know that you can have shemen with it. Kama shloish lugin 3. Uman shemen le the yomer shloish lugin. Who says 3? Rebbe. Become maisilim carbon. So again, according to this, it seems it can't be like that. Itanya Taki. If you learn it that way, you can't get out of that. Okay. Let's look at a couple questions. Let's look at question 12. Ma nafkamina beplugta the tana bedin hamas nadiv shemen. If you only give oil by itself, that you learn out from a mincha. Doin mina or din mina v'uki batra. So one who says that doin mina. So kamitza, just like kamitza, its leftovers are given over to the kohanim. So too, the oil is given over to the kohanim, leftovers, and it cannot be less than a lug. One who says dinav l'uki batra, that everything is burnt, the whole thing is burnt, not given to the kohanim, and it should not be less than 3 lugin. Okay, TA 11. Rabbi Tarfon Omer misnadvin shemen, kama shemen, so either 1 or 3. Madina shel shemen zeh. So again, some machlokas if it's kul ishim. Okay, let's see what he writes. The kaim so maktiru v'shir of necholin. Okay, so that's what we just said, and maybe TB 14, same question. So let's see what I wrote. Machlokas o lug o shlosh lugin begam machlokas im hakoil sarfin the ein shemen lekohanim o yesh shemen litain lekohanim. Okay, I'll take it. That's TB 14. Okay. All right, let's finish up this parak. Let's see what else we got here. So, let's find where we were. Tanya. Omer Shmuel. Hamas nadiv yain. If a person only gives wine as a nedava, nothing else, maybe he can bring it. Umazalfin al gabah ishim, and you can sprinkle it together with the fire. Because now this is clearly not what we said before. We saw already, according to the shita of, if I could find it, Rabbi Kiva, yain Rabbi Kiva l'sfolim. That's put into bowls, and we pour it like libations, not put on the fire. So my timer. So why does this opinion say it should be sprinkled onto the fire? Omikra v'yayin takri v'nesa chatzehin. So it mentions yayin, and it says isha. It's supposed to be burnt as on the mizbeach. But it's going to extinguish the fire on the mizbeach. You're going to start pouring a ton of liquid wine onto the mizbech, you're going to burn. It's going to get extinguished. So we say kiboy b'miksa slushmi kiboy. There's a big fire, so it's true. It may extinguish it a little bit, but it's not significant enough to cause a problem. A person who brings coals onto the mizbech and it causes it to extinguish, that's a problem. So, but Rashi says, "Lushmi kiboy dul kapid kra ela eish tamid." We're only concerned about the eish tamid. So apparently it's not true. We should be concerned about this too. The answer is the leka elahai. All you have only one coal there. So therefore, because of that, you extinguish the whole thing. But if you didn't extinguish the whole thing, it's not a problem. Kiboy the mitzvah shiny. Over here, you're right. Maybe you will extinguish the fire, but this is the way you're supposed to do it. It's exersa kosov that tells you that when it comes to wine, as you're misnad to be yain, you pour it onto the mizbeach. If it burns out a little bit or a lot. That's okay because that's a mitzvah, so it's different. Tashma, Tanur Belezer min Yaakov kalafisha nastu tayru litroim. Since the Torah says that we're supposed to do trumos hadeshen, there's a requirement of cleaning off the ashes. Yochi chaba v'yitrom. You would think maybe you could extinguish everything and then do it, right? Probably a lot easier. So we said, no. When it comes to even my trumas hadeshen, where it could be a lot easier if there's not a whole bunch of fire all over the place, it would be a lot easier for you to clean up. Nonetheless, we have to have that fire there. But it's a mitzvah to do trumas hadeshen. So shani hasam eshed yoyva not there. It's possible you could wait first to do both. So basically, there's a huge difference because over here, the whole mitzvah is to pour the wine mamish onto the fire. And therefore it could be kiboy, but that's just the mitzvah. Over here, the mitzvah is to do trumas hadeshen, and you could wait and not do it immediately, right? And therefore, that could be different. Tashma, yayin kedivri Rabbi Kiva l'sfolim. As we said, Rabbi Kiva disagrees, and he holds that it's not to be put onto the fire, but rather it's put into bowls and it's poured. So shemen kedivri Reb Tarfon leishim, and the shemen is put onto the mizbeach as to be burnt. So that's apparently goes against what we just said, or it's a machlokas at least. But and furthermore, Tanya yain nesach l'sfolim. The yain nesach is put into bowls. Eno el ishim, or maybe the yain nesach is taka also put on the mizbech and burned. So amrit lichabe. It says no, you can't extinguish. So the reason why the yain nesach clearly has to be poured on the side of mizbech and not onto the fire is because it's going to extinguish it. Now, why not? If it's a mitzvah, if that's how you're supposed to do yain nesach, so like we said, if you're doing the dava of yayin, so then why do we make a difference? Kasha. Rabbi Yehuda harav Shimon. So this gets into Masechta Shabbos a little bit. What is Rabbi Yehuda Rav Shimon? So it has to do with davar she'ein mischaven. Is a davar she'ein mischaven mutter or aser? So according to Rabbi Yehuda, he holds davar she'ein mischaven is aser, and therefore lo sichba is even if you didn't have intention, right? You didn't have the intention to extinguish the fire, but davar she'ein mischaven is still aser. And Rav Shimon holds, and Shmuel holding Rav Shimon, that says Rashi, Kivan she'ein mischaven l'chavo, since your intention was not to extinguish it, ein lo sichabe, ru'oya level aser. You're not going to be concerned about this because it was not your intention. Now, Rashi points out an interesting point. We know that Rav Shimon holds, even though Rav Shimon is mischaven is mutter, but he's moed b'psik reishval yomus, that when it comes to the notion of like taking a chicken and chopping its head because you want the head but you don't want to kill the animal, doesn't make any difference because it's 100% going to kill the animal. It's called a psik reishval yomus. Nonetheless, so by you pouring this onto the fire, it's going to extinguish. So even if you hold davar she'ein mischaven as mutter, there's a psik reisha. So Rashi says, Eshen mazlif le betipin dakos ma'oid. Doesn't mean you have to dump it all in one shot. Maybe you could just drop a small amount, and therefore it's shaykh that the fire will not extinguish. It's not for sure. It's not for sure psik reisha. Hilkach inami mechaba. Even if you do. By extinguish it, but tipin gasos davar she'ein mischaven hu. So that's the idea, because it's not a guarantee. Okay. Well, remember the Shmuel Rav Shimon Svirule. Does that mean he holds like Rav Shimon? David Shimon Mechaven is Mutter. Av Yomer Shmuel Mechaven Gacheles Shomatechas Reshus Rabim. A person is allowed to extinguish the coals of metal in a Reshus Rabim B'shil Shul Yizoiko Barabim, in order to not injure other people. So this is more in Shabbos. So Rashi explains, because it's a gechel shel matechas, it's made out of metal, that's really labar bas kibuihu. It's not really something that could be extinguished. It's just very, very hot. But by you pouring water on it or whatever it is, you're not really extinguishing it. It's not like a real fire. It's just very, very hot. And therefore, it's not considered to be midiraisa, a form of kibui. And therefore, the surah durabanan hu deika. It's a din durabanan. Mishum hezek rabim will gaz rabbanan. Because of hezek rabbanan, we're makel and allow you to do something regarding dafka gechela shel matecha. So it's made out of metal. As we continue to study beis of all lo gechela shel eitz, because if that's mamish, there's a real fire, and that's mamish kibud deraisa. We're not going to allow you to violate issa deraisa for that reason. Now, if you talk if you talk a whole to Shimon, nami. So then, why does he say by gachel shalates that you can't do this? Well, it's a davar shen mischaven is mutter. So, but davar shen mischaven savak Shimon. You're right. He does hold like him, but over here it's a malacha shen srichel gufa several Rabbi Yehuda. Interestingly enough, this is a malacha shen srichel gufa. It's not the same thing as davar shen mischaven. You're doing a malacha, but it's not something for the sake of what you're trying to accomplish. You're not doing kibui for the sake of the kibui, for extinguishing it. You're only doing it to prevent the potential of a person being injured. Says Rashi, this is malacha shen srichel gufa according to Rav Shimon your potter. The kibui left sarach gufahu. This type of kibui is left sarach gufo. She had sarach lo dolhal vai shalobolav. You wish it wasn't there to begin with. You already wished it was already not there, or not hot. The dami l'moitzi as hames. It's comparable to taking a dead body out to the Rishus Rabim. L'sokum yel ponov, just that it'll take it outside from that person's face. The patel Rav Shimon Masechta Shabbos, fine. So in that case, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda regarding malachin shein tzricha gufa. Okay. And therefore, that's the reason why when it comes to gachel shel eitz, it's not a malacha shein, it's not a davar shein mischav, it's a malacha shein tzricha gufa. Rav Huna, the sachim, when it comes to the libations shenitma'u, that became impure, ois lehen maracha mimnei atzman. So they should be put on a separate pyre by itself. The sarfan let it be burned mishum shnemer b'kodesh be'esh tisarif. Tanami hachi hadam v'hashemen v'menachis v'anasachim. All these different things shenitma'u that became tamei. Oiselhen maracha b'fnei atzman. We make a fire by itself. A sarfan. Amli Shmuel Rab Huna Rav Chana Bagda'ah. Aisili be'asara. Gather me 10 people, kamayu, and say in front of them, so as to publicize this din, the sachim shenitmu oislehem maracham and me'atzim v'sarfan. Okay, and that is, in fact, the end of that parak. Hanulach kol hatader, hanulach kol hatader, hanulach kol hatader. This is not a very tader parak, pretty short. You're not going to get to it very often. Ha ha ha. Okay, let's see if we have another question over here. We saw question 12, question 13 already in tomorrow's daf, question TA 11 we saw, and TB 14, that finishes it. We're going to be starting the next parak, Mi'at Hashem, as we're getting closer and closer to the end of this Masechta, another 28 blot. Dam chatas shenitaz al habeged, if you have dam avachatas that's sprinkled on blood onto a garment, then harizeh toyin kibus, you're going to need to do the laundering, and this is going to be before the zrika, as we'll discuss tomorrow. Adkan.